Welcome to episode 15 of Amplified Marriage. Today, we talk about married after children.
Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. My name's Natalie.
And I'm Brian.
Whatever time it is, grab a coffee or tea and a snack. Get cozy because today we're talking about being married with children.
And not the sitcom.
Yeah, no. Although it does sometimes feel like a sitcom.
Yeah, it can. We're kind of moving into a part of the podcast that we wanted to get to eventually, but we're kind of just going to delve just a little bit into it, just about life after having children.
Yes.
We have older kids now, 15, 13, and
10.
10, thank you. I know I have kids. I don't know when their birthdays are. That's why I have my lovely wife knows all those things. But we read a quote, and really having children and being married and staying healthy in your marriage really depends a lot on your perspective. And a perspective that we read from a quote, her name was Jacqueline Smith, said, after having children, life becomes about living beyond yourself, about being bigger than ever.
Yeah.
You may have heard us say on this podcast, and maybe you haven't, and I'm going to say it now, is that there's two times in your life when you realize how selfish you really are.
Yep.
The first is
when you get married.
The second is
when you have children.
So there's those two times. When you get married, and Natalie and I, we didn't live together before we got married. We had a place before we got married.
Which I lived in.
And I stayed at home. But then we moved in, we got married, we moved in. And then we're living together in the same space, having to share the same kitchen, the same bathroom, the same shower, the same bed, the same all this stuff. And I realized how entrenched in my ways that when I wanted to watch TV, the shows that I wanted to watch, or the books, so when I wanted to read, not when she wanted, can you talk to me about your feelings at like 10 o'clock at night?
That hasn't changed 19 years later.
No, I've just learned how to adapt to the change. But all of these things, you realize how selfish you really are.
Yeah.
And then it's really easy to kind of get into a funk after you have kids.
Exactly. And I was thinking too, prior to having kids, you can sleep in whenever you want. Like you can have naps whenever you want. You can come and go as you please. Like
go to whatever restaurant you want.
It's so cheap because it's just you two. And so you don't realize the financial effects
of
having children until you have them.
Whenever it's just me and Natalie that goes out, or me and one of the kids, even one of my sons will go out and we'll have 2 full meals, and it was like $20. But if I take the whole kids out, even to McDonald's, it's like a $50 or $60 meal just to go to a fast food joint, more if you're going to a regular restaurant.
Yeah.
And so we were talking, and there's 5 things that we want to talk about today about what happens after you have kids and how to keep on trucking.
Yes.
Keep on going.
It is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
No, it's definitely not a sprint. And so there's 5 things that we want to mention just about keeping the romance alive, or keeping you normal together after you've had kids.
That's
and
right.
My kids are older, but I can tell you those early years of having children, waking up, changing diapers all hours of the night, and doing all that stuff.
And that wasn't just infancy. Like, there's one of those things like what you wish people would say after having children that they don't. It doesn't just stop, at least in our family. I'm sure there are those miracle children that sleep all through the night from the moment they're born.
We don't know what those are like.
We don't know what those are like. We have 3 that did not sleep the night until they were well past a year old. And so it's not a one size fits all kind of, one scenario fits the box, so to speak.
Right? So all of you parents out there, the very first point that we have today may be a little bit countercultural.
Yep.
But what we need you to hear this is, if you want to maintain a happy marriage with your spouse while you are raising children, you never ever put your children first.
No. And that's something that that's kind of been a motto of ours for years, especially like we started it when the kids were little, when they could walk.
Yeah.
Where every time that you would come home from work, the first 15 minutes, it was like, "Okay, kids, like it's mom's time. It's couch time. We called it couch time, where dad would come in the door and then the kids would have to wait. And they knew we set a timer on the microwave, and mom got dad's full on first attention. And I will say that that wasn't the time to discuss the woes of the day.
No.
Right? Do you remember that? Where
remember when I would come in and you hand me ramen?
Let me tell you how my day was.
Yeah.
That moment there, that couch time, that's not the time that we chose to talk about sort of the silly parts of the day.
Right? I remember when Rainen, our oldest, was young, he would be up until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We just would keep him up with us for long periods of time, keep him up late. And then we realized this is ridiculous. He wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. You weren't sleeping. No one was sleeping. The neighbors weren't sleeping because he was still up. And then we found out he was colicky later, but the priority wasn't at all on our first child given to each other.
No.
We weren't even doing the couch time until Raiden was like 5 or 6.
That's right.
But
there wasn't any time because he needed more care.
Yeah.
As he was struggling with colicky, behavior and stuff and he wasn't sleeping, and he never slept. He would nap, and then as soon as he like sensed your shadow walking by, or he could feel the breeze of you walking by, he was awake.
Through a closed door.
Right. And he cried a lot, and for hours he would just scream and cry. And so we were just survival mode at that time. So there wasn't a priority. It was like eat, sleep, and keep the baby alive.
Right.
Like it really was.
Kind of how it is. You wake up at 3 a.m, like, oh, is he breathing?
Oh,
like
geez.
first time parents now, whenever we talk to them, we're like, we know we feel you.
Exactly.
We understand.
And
you want to make sure they're breathing still. Well, and here's what ends up happening is you focus all of your attention on your kids only as you're growing up. You actually sacrifice your relationship with your spouse, and you begin to not know them.
The tendency
is you begin to not know them. You begin to maybe even resent them, because you're not communicating with them about the things that you need to talk to them about.
That's right.
Because you're not actually working on the relationship. You're not prioritizing the marriage. You're putting your kids, who are innately born selfish, and they suck up all of your time, all of your effort. Unless you have one of those magical children that sit in the middle of the carpet reading books at 2 years old, which is not the majority.
No.
They eat up all of your time, and you even forget your hobbies. Like Natalie loved to paint.
Yeah.
And we have kids, and she put painting off for years. I love playing guitar, and it wasn't until a few years after Rainen was born that I started picking up the guitar again and started playing for church. And
I mean, there are seasons of ebb and flow, because parenting in those early years of infancy is exhausting. And, you're dealing with postpartum hormones and nursing and body changes and trying to navigate like another human being, and all like keeping them alive. And then it just seems to have like a domino effect. At least it can have a domino effect. And so
don't neglect your spouse. Prioritize your marriage.
That's right. And it's important that you don't wait to do that when they're like going to college and moving out of the house. And
then you look at your spouse and you're like, I don't even know who you are.
Right.
Like, I don't know what your hobbies are. I don't know.
Yeah. And that was a fear of ours. And like, it's one that we've talked about for a long time. Like, our oldest is 15. So we've talked about this for a long time of just making sure that we nurture the priority of each other.
Absolutely.
And that time, yes, obviously family time with the kids included is absolutely essential and important, but more so our time, because if we're healthy, then we're parenting healthy, right?
Yeah. And the next one is sex. We hear this, oddly enough, a lot from couples. They had kids and then all of a sudden sex stopped.
I mean, there obviously is a certain period of time where that has to stop after a baby comes, but...
And there's recovery period.
Yeah, there's definitely recovery period.
And like, maybe I'll speak to the guys on this. Like, guys, your wife's body's going to change. If you think that you're going to marry the wife of your youth, like the Bible says, the wife of your youth, or the woman of your youth, And in the next 25 years, nothing is going to change in that body, especially after they have children.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
That's right.
And we've said this before. Love just isn't a feeling.
No.
It's an action.
And it's a choice.
And if you're not choosing to continue to find your wife attractive and find ways to find her still attractive, because seriously, the woman's body changes. And it's not like you're super stud you were when you're 19 years old either. Like, I'm not the same build I was when I was 17. My mom always calls me too skinny. I'm a bit thicker now in my older years. Yeah. We don't stay the same. Things change. You get gray hairs. Your chest sags into your drawers or whatever it is, like whatever it is, but things change. But guys, in particular, because we're visual, you married your wife for a reason. You love her.
Yep.
It's not just the physical side that you love her. If that's why you're married, you got married just so you could have sex,
like beauty
because
fades.
Beauty fades. And,
that's right.
But what's not going to fade is you want to keep nurturing her personality and then nurturing who she is.
That's right.
You choose to stay attracted to each other.
And let's not forget that carrying another human being in your body for 9 months takes a toll, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a toll, right? And I mean, I loved being pregnant, even though they were difficult pregnancies. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved being pregnant. I miss being pregnant all these years later. I miss feeling the baby moving around. So there's joy in that little secret, right? In growing that baby.
Right. And here's the thing about sex. And this sounds really unsexy, but schedule it in. Saturday night at 7:30.
Oh, we had to make appointments.
Because like if you wait too long, then you're tired too late at night because you've been up with the kids all day, or you've had to work your job, and you find excuses not to do it. But the thing is that we found is that when you schedule that time in, that's what I'm thinking about during the day. I'm fired up. I'm like, oh yeah, that's.
And you're anticipating and you're nurturing that with your wife all day long. Right. And so
you're flirting and you're sending maybe text messages and things that are going on, but you know what's going to come down. And here's something that we read as well, is that consider it self-care.
Absolutely. It's essential.
Taking care of each other physically, because that's how God made us, was to love each other and have sex. And so you schedule that. And it's all about self-care, and you're taking care of yourself as well as each other, which kind of blends in to number 3, is schedule that date night, which can lead to the scheduling of the Saturday night at 7:30.
That's right. And it's so important. And one of the things that, I hear a lot of people say is, well, we can't afford a babysitter, or we don't have anyone to watch the kids. And so, I mean, when we had little ones, we really couldn't afford a babysitter, but we made it a priority. And
sometimes it wasn't. It was
we had a lot
fleeting.
We have a lot of stay-in date nights, and that just might be what you have to do. But we did make it a priority. And who we had was our friend's daughter, and I mean, we paid like $5 or whatever, and so we pretty much funded her university.
Well, but 8 years we were there.
That's right, but. It's super important to find someone, if you don't have any family nearby, that you trust, that would be willing to look after the kids, because there's nothing like, I mean, when you're home and you're having a stay at home date, you're still like on mom and dad duty, if that makes sense. Like if the baby cries or there's a diaper needing to be changed, you're still the one having to do that. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of being able to go out and have someone else deal with that for a little bit. And
some of the best dates we ever had we don't remember necessarily the ones where we spent $150 on dinner and going out and going to see a movie and doing all the stuff. What we remember is those dates where we had $5 in the bank. We went and had a McDonald's ice cream cone, and we wandered around Walmart, took a drive up into a neighborhood, and talked about houses and what we want to do for the future. I remember those dates way more than I remember the Earls or the big fancy dinner dates and things like that.
And for us, like in our marriage, that isn't a priority. Like, it's not about how much money we're spending on a date. It's the fact that we're with each other.
Men find low maintenance women.
Right. And so for me, if I have the choice to grab a specialty coffee and drive around with my man, or go to the most expensive restaurant in town, I'm going to choose the Starbucks and the drive around.
And I appreciate that she chooses the
Always,
Starbucks.
because I can find better ways to spend that money than at a dinner. and then it's gone.
Right. Yeah. The next one, which is number 4, is
Laugh.
Like, unless you're two people that just have no sense of humor, I know couples that are just, they're not funny people.
No.
But with each other, they're quirky. They can make each other laugh.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons they were attracted to each other. In most marriages, the spouses can make each other laugh or have stupid jokes, or they have inside things that are happening. And if you can laugh even in times of frustration or anger and things that are going on, and you end up showing that to your kids that, hey, we can love each other. And it's not just about the intensity or the seriousness of the arguments or the things that are going on.
That's right.
I love dad jokes.
Yeah, you
I have
do.
an app on my phone that gives me some of the best dad jokes out there.
Yeah.
So much so that my boys quote them to me, so I'll laugh at them. And
That's
my
right.
daughter will read them to me sometimes for 20 minutes at a time. I love dad jokes, and we're laughing with Natalie's laughing because they're so stupid.
Right.
But we're laughing with each other. We have
Each other and with our kids. Like,
Absolutely.
if I'm sad or I'm frustrated or whatever, my middle son, he always does the Yosemite Sam, I hate that rabbit. And it gets me every single time. And
Or my older son makes a joke about my age. Right now he's stuck on me being old in the 1812 times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where he gets that. He makes a joke about, is there even electricity back then, Dad? So,
yeah.
but they do things that make you laugh. And that's because we've given ourselves permission to laugh with them and
That's
with
right.
each other.
Find the joy. I remember actually my oldest, when I was freaking out about something when he was little, and he put his little arms out and he's like, Mom, chill. And I looked at him and I thought, wherever did he even know to say that in the proper context? And I started laughing, and then he was laughing, and it just took the edge off, put me in a better mood, right? So find reasons to find joy and laughter in the mundane, because sometimes parenting can feel like a drudgery.
Oh man.
And it feels like, it's never going to end. And then everyone tells you who has kids, oh, it gets better. And you never believe them. It does get better. It's like fine wine. It gets better with age, but you have to put the work in from the beginning.
Well, and something that we've always said too is, you want to be a good parent, you have to get up off the couch.
Absolutely.
And now we can just add, this is back then, but you want to be a good parent, you got to put your phone down. You want to be a good parent, you got to go to where the kids are and do the things with them, and find the things that they like to do with them.
That's
and
right.
how you're going to discipline them or talk to them or any of that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
You're not kidding. What I remember just before we moved, from the north, we moved back here. We had a really good day with the kids. It was kind of a little challenging around bedtime, and you went out with one of our friends, and I had my middle son stand at the top of the stairs and projectile vomit from the top to the bottom. That was
fun.
And then,
it was funny for me.
Well, you came in, saw what was happening, and turned around and left me to clean it up, knowing
That's
how
right.
much I hate vomit.
That's right.
But it was one of those things that the other son was looking down the stairs, and then he was puking, and Amherst was too young, and
That's
she just
right.
stayed asleep. That was a tough day.
Yeah.
After at the end of everything, and eventually we got to laugh at this because it was such a psycho thing.
It was funny because the visual was hilarious, with ski goggles on and like a t-shirt wrapped around your face and my dish gloves and
Sprayed with perfume.
yeah, like it was really comical. And I will say, like, parenting and the gross parts of parenting is not just the wife's job. And I really appreciate your involvement. I guess it's so important for...
I wasn't always involved in those things. I tried to avoid those as much as humanly possible.
Oh, I know, but
I'm glad we could talk about it now.
I made sure that when you were around, that you absolutely were participating in caring for these babies. Katie Ziskine, who's a therapist, says, if your partner makes a joke instead of getting serious, let yourself laugh. Laughing together allows parents to have fun while raising children. And it's so true.
And kids are crazy and they laugh at stuff.
And it's
you want
the
to laugh.
best, how do I word this? It's the best ministry.
Right.
Like, outside of you as my husband, my children are the next best thing.
And the longest ministry you'll have in your entire life.
Yep.
The next thing is number 5, don't coast. Mm-hmm. It lines up a little bit with number 1, whereas prioritize your marriage. But no matter how things and how great things are before you had kids, you can't just leave it on autopilot and expect it all to be the same.
No.
And not to fly into the side of a mountain because you just didn't make any changes and you just assumed everything was going to be fine.
Right.
What happens when you assume? And that's what's going to happen is if you assume that things are going to be fine and you never put any effort into your spouse or the relationship or how you communicate or if you're praying together or making the relationship better or how you're dealing with your children together.
Yep.
It's easy just to see things go left or right.
That's right.
Without anything ever changing.
And it's one of those things too, to talk about those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were working long hours when we had little ones, but it was like when it's your time off and when you're home, you don't just get to sit with your feet up on the couch, and be doted on. And yes, there's an element of, having dinner prepared and stuff that I tried to have done because I knew that you really like that. It didn't always happen, but you're on dad duty now, right? It's not, you don't go to your 9 to 5 and then you come home and that's it.
You're right.
Right. And so making sure that you talk those expectations through, so that you don't become resentful or like an ostrich with his head in the sand where it's, we'll just pretend like it's not happening and then hope that he notices. No, ladies, we need to talk, and be clear with our expectations in that.
And it's really easy to push the expectations aside or because, you're putting out a lot of little things are going wrong all the time. You're putting out fires. They're trying to touch a hot stove, color on the wall, stick their head in the toilet, doing all these things. And there's day to day dealing with all that kind of stuff that it's easy to put the relationship on the back burner. And something that we don't understand all the time, but life doesn't stop when you have kids.
In some ways it just begins.
In some ways it just begins, but it changes.
It does.
And we actually it started getting more and more fun the more kids we had, for us anyway, but we really enjoyed being parents when we were young. I don't know that we enjoyed it super awesome fun where you're right in the middle of it and you're like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. And
it ebb and flows, right? It's not it wasn't all challenging. There were pockets of challenging times. And thankfully, like it wasn't all of our kids at the same time, I think. I'm so grateful that they kind of had each their times where they were being silly, but parenting's hard.
Marriage is
hard. And, if we prioritize the marriage, I think it just sets you up for being just better parents.
Right. And if you're willing to communicate all of those things and work through issues together.
That's right. And laugh. I mean, I remember our middle son I changed his diaper at 3 a.m. and I was covered in everything from my chin down. And what do you do at that moment, right? I woke you up and you helped and I went and had a shower and we just laughed about it. You have to be able to laugh.
You were laughing.
Well, I laughed after the fact. I was not laughing in the moment.
I sure was. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was hilarious in hindsight, right? But still, be willing to laugh and find the humor in raising children because it is comical at times.
And these listeners are just a few of the things you can do to kind of focus in on your relationship while you're having kids. We thought this was really interesting as we were talking about this kind of stuff. This is something we've learned to talk about in the last few years as our kids are getting older and older. It seems like something happens with the older one and we're like, yeah, we nailed that. And then the next one comes up and then you're having to change, with your kids on the fly and how you approach them or discipline them or talk to them or relate to them. And it's all a lot of change, but it's really easy to forget the spouse.
That's right.
And we encourage you to put the kids, we're not saying never focus on your kids. We're saying that they don't need to be number one above your spouse.
That's right.
Your spouse was there before you were.
Yeah.
Or before the kids were.
That's right.
Your spouse was there first, then it was the kids. And so just focusing on your spouse, you two being healthy, me and Natalie being healthy and whole means that we can be better parents together.
That's right. And it's I think one of the greatest gifts that our children can receive is 2 healthy parents who aren't perfect, but who they see grinding it out and working it through.
Absolutely.
The tough times.
And so there's just what are those 5 things that prioritize your marriage?
Yep. Have sex.
Schedule date nights.
Laugh about it.
When you're scheduling those date nights, they can lead to sex, and then you can be laughing about it.
Have a good sense of humor all the way around.
And don't coast. Don't just give up because you have children. Don't just assume that your marriage is going to be fine 20 years after you have kids and the kids are gone.
That's right. Keep
Work
nurturing.
at it. If you really enjoy these podcasts, it means a lot to us when you share it, when you let people know about it, when you leave a review. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can actually communicate with us through those 2 places. Mm-hmm. If there's a topic or a question or anything you would like for us to discuss, please email us at amplifiedmarriage@gmail.com.
That's right.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Talk to you soon.